What is going on, everyone?
Hey, what's up?
We are back with another video here on Let's Talk Resident Evil, talking about a very topical subject here, something that a lot of people are talking about today after the Capcom Spotlight event that was happening yesterday evening, and it revolves around Leon S. Kennedy not being the main protagonist for the reason of, well, it wouldn't be scary if he was in the game, according to the director. It would not be as, fearful with the horror they're trying to capture because these characters have been through so much. They're almost like superheroes at this point. So, John, what do you think about this? Leon is your favorite character.
Yeah.
He was rumored to be the main character. It seemed like they originally wanted him to be the main character for Resident Evil 9. What are your thoughts on this so far?
So, their words exactly were, it would be difficult to create a horrific experience around Leon, or words kind of like that.
If a bucket dropped,
If a bucket dropped, he wouldn't jump.
Yeah,
He's not going to jump to a door, enemy coming through the door. He's a professional. He's numb. It's less about Leon and more about, I think, the original characters, because they do talk about Chris and the other one as well. Like, Chris and Leon are too strong. They're too high of a tier to deal with, zombie level threats. It's not going to be scary. It's not going to be relatable. That doesn't mean it wouldn't be fun. And that's where I think the disconnect is with people, is people want to see Leon because they love Leon.
We all do.
Me included.
Yeah.
But what they're going for, the direction that they're going for, Leon doesn't fit, and I completely understand where the director's coming from. Whether I agree or not with it, I mean, opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. I don't agree entirely that Leon couldn't work in a horror game. I do understand, though, what they're going for.
Yeah.
And yes, Leon, if Leon in 2029, 51-year-old Leon is jumping at buckets or scared about a creature busting through a wall, at this point, yeah, I'd probably be a little offended.
Yeah, and we don't
What
think...
the fuck's Leon doing? Jumping. He's the guy who's throwing grenades in New York City, blowing people up.
If you look at him in the animated movies, it is insane. And the thing is like, the misconception is like, we don't think just because he's, 51 years old that he can't fit in this mold of Resident Evil.
For sure.
I just think that, like you said, to your point, like, they just don't think that it fits this style of horror. Now, it is interesting that they just, like, the director kind of smirks when he mentions Leon, almost as if, like, a wink, wink, like, hey, why did you not mention Chris or Jill or any? It almost seems like he's like just saying, "Hey, Leon specifically."
In that first clip,
right? So
then in the other clip, he actually says Chris and Leon.
Yeah. So it's like, is these characters still going to show up? Is the character of Leon going to be just like something that happens where you play him towards the end of the game and it's more of an action section for Leon? We don't know, and that's the thing. I think a lot of people are just either just getting offended overall because Leon is their favorite character and he's not going to be a main character. And the second thing is people are scared that we won't see any Raccoon City survivors whatsoever when we're going back to Raccoon City, when it's supposed to be this 30-year milestone that they keep hyping up. Like, this is bringing it back to Raccoon City. This is bringing it back to that original story. I don't think that no characters that we know will appear. I just don't think that it's going to be as big of a role as these rumors and leaks got people excited about. And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, listen, don't give so much stock into the leaks because you get disappointed. You get bummed out. And look, Leon probably was originally going to be a main character. I'm not denying that, but I just think for the director of RE7 with this vision, they didn't want to have Leon in the game the whole time.
I'm sure that every game starts as which of our Raccoon City survivors is going to be in this one. And then they pivot to, well, is this what we want to do, or is this what we want to do? Well, we want to create an immersive experience that can be sold for the PlayStation VR, or if you even remove the VR from the equation, a more relatable immersive experience of horror in first person. What should we do? Does it make sense to put Chris in that role? No. Does it make sense to put Leon in that role in 2017? No. That's where they come up with Ethan, right? Like, now they're coming up with a new character that is more relatable because Ethan's dead. Spoiler alert.
The Winters family
saga's over.
Yeah.
This is, 10 years or so. A little less than 10 years. It's like 7 years or whatever. But it's like, it's a considerable half decade or so before Rose's DLC. So there is a gap where Rose is growing up and all of that.
And Chris is potentially busy with
Potentially
that.
taking care of her.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? There's a lot that could be going on right now. You know, we don't know if Mia's in the equation anymore because she gets lifted out at the end.
She does, yeah.
So we're not really sure what's going on with Rose or anything like that. We probably never will.
The corrupt BSAA.
We don't know what's going on with that. That could be something that's stirring up. That could be why because Chris is rogue at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see him getting called back to Raccoon City, right? It's not going to happen. So Leon makes the most sense if anybody's going to show up.
I agree.
Jill doesn't make sense. I know that she makes sense in the fact that like Raccoon City is like really big for her because of Nemesis and all that. She's also BSAA. They have to be invited on American soil to be active.
And we have no idea
NGO.
what's going on with it because they kind of left us on that big cliffhanger, which in true RE fashion sometimes they don't ever wrap up. So I'm curious to see what they do, or are they just going to ignore those two games entirely and just say, you know what, we're just going back to Raccoon City and Grace is who we're focusing on with a sprinkle of some original characters in there.
Yeah, you always assume they won't wrap something up until they do with Resident Evil because there's a lot of writers over the years. Seven and Village have notably the most deviation with writing. They're Western writers, whereas most of them before this were Eastern writers. They were Japanese Capcom in-house writers. This game, I'm hoping, is going to be in-house again because we're going back to Raccoon City. I really don't want an inexperienced Western writer to get their hands on this. If it is a Western writer, not that they couldn't do a good job, it needs to be somebody who's been working for Capcom for a long time.
Absolutely.
Like somebody who helps with translation or something like that, which are two different skill sets. I'm not saying that translator can write a story because it's definitely not inherently true.
Half the battle is just writing a decent story that's compelling, that gets us involved. And the thing is that we saw in the interview how reluctant they were to go back to Raccoon City because they had to connect the dots to all of the lore in the games. So we were talking about this last night. Like, I wonder who was in charge of this continuity, because in a way you really do have to connect the dots pretty hardcore to not only the original games, because Outbreak is included in those games, but also the remakes as well, and kind of in this melting pot of this RE9 that we have now. So it's a very tough thing, and I do commend them for at least giving this a shot instead of them being in the office saying, go back to Raccoon City? No. And then they just shoot it down. Yeah,
so I really hope, I know this probably isn't the case, but I really hope that they bring Shinji on as a consultation.
That'd be so cool. But we haven't heard anything,
He's not going to get credited.
Right.
He's not a part of the development. But they should at least bring him in for coffee to sit down and be like, this is what we think we're going to do going back to Raccoon City. What do you think? Because he's the one who kind of masterminded it, right?
That's true.
And the producer as well. You need the old blood to come in and greenlight it, I think, in order for it to be really, really good. Now, some of these, employees that have been working with Capcom for a while, they have seen a broad spectrum of Resident Evil.
Yes.
I don't know if any of them have been there since the beginning, any major roles, other than like they may have been minor roles in the past. None of these names that we were seeing in the interviews, some of them, besides the RE7 director, it kind of felt like we were looking at some people for the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, having new blood or new people in their new creative minds that help Nakanishi have his vision is good sometimes. But like you said, there is so many people that kind of rotate through the doors of Capcom. And I think that's the thing is, like, when you're going back to Raccoon City, there is a lot of stuff that you have to consider. And a lot of people that used to be around when these games were coming out in their infancy are not around anymore. So at the end of the day, Leon or Chris or Jill, like, I definitely would like to see them in the game. Maybe not all of them, but maybe, a sliver of it or some kind of connection. Because if we are going to Raccoon City and we're unraveling this, conspiracy even further or finding out these truths, I feel like it would just be appropriate to have some of these characters show up, or one of them or two of them, or, I'd rather take something from the Raccoon City history and kind of tie it back to some of these characters than not having them in there at all for the sole purpose of, well, they're not really going to be scared in this situation. I think as long as it fits the story, it doesn't feel like a Leon segment is forced, or a, like, let's just say a cutscene happens and then Leon just shows up out of nowhere and then there isn't really much explanation. Almost like Chris in RE7, which I wasn't really a fan of in that game. Not only his design, but the fact that he kind of just shows up out of nowhere and helps Ethan. Okay, fine. And then the Not a Hero DLC wasn't really that fulfilling once you played it.
Yeah.
So
I pulled this up for us. That's why I was on my phone.
Yeah,
guys.
you're good. Yeah.
Masato Kumazawa has only been with Capcom since the development of Resident Evil 4 Remake and Kunitsugami was
and that's one of the
created.
producers on 9.
So he is one of the 2 major producers. He's
Okay.
new. He's not an original.
Yeah, so like I said, some new
And I'm
blood
going to
in
look at
there.
the next one now.
Yeah.
The other one, which is Masachika Kawata.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. It's like I feel like if you're going to do something with these characters and bring it back, even if you have new people on board, somebody has to be steering the ship with like, hey, this makes sense, or we should do this with with these specific characters at this specific time.
So this makes me feel better.
Okay.
So the other producer, Kawata, has been around since RE3 Nemesis.
Okay.
And technically, he's been around since Mega Man 8.
So he's the RE3 Nemesis, Dino Crisis 1 and 2.
Yeah, he did Dino Crisis 1, Dino
Resident
Crisis
Evil
2,
Remake.
Resident Evil. He's been on Resident Evil
OG
for a long
RE4,
time.
5. Yeah, he's been on it for a minute.
So having this guy in here is promising.
Better than somebody that just coming in.
Now, that is not a name that I recognized when I saw him.
Mm-hmm.
So he probably has been a producer. Yeah, it looks like he's been a producer since
99?
2012.
Oh, okay. He was a different role back in
And then
99.
he was a backgrounds creator and a stage CG lead. So he was doing some of the artwork.
So he's been in the factory, so to speak. He's been seeing how.
And he
all
was
this
on
comes
the
together.
original RE4's PS2 conversion team. So he is credited. He does have a history, and that's what we want to see. He's the most credited person we know of that's working on the game.
Now, would you be completely let down if there is 0 Raccoon City survivors showing up in this game? Not even just Leon, but just none at all.
So I would be disappointed because I don't feel like we can go back to Raccoon City without somebody showing up.
I agree 100%.
It wouldn't make much sense to me that if the real truth of Raccoon City came out, call me a Leon fanboy or whatever, but Leon needs to be involved because he kind of spent his whole career covering up the government secrets, like protecting them, but also airing out the dirty laundry on his own, trying to get, Simmons.
Yeah.
And Wilson and like all the things we see in Resident Evil 6 and all the CG movies, like he's doing his best to kind of become the Batman for the U.S. government and the president's right-hand man in most cases. Like he was good friends with Adam Benford. Mm-hmm. He was good friends with, obviously, President Graham. It would be nice to see him get a send-off, even if he is going to die. I know there's a big theory that he's going to give his life to save grace.
Interesting.
I don't necessarily hate that. I just wish that it's done properly. And I don't know if I trust the RE7 director to kill my character properly. No offense to him. I know he created a great horror experience, but...
And we like Revelations as well.
When it comes to character moments, his legacy's pretty weak. So I would say that it's probably better off if he doesn't die. But having nobody appear at all would be a letdown.
Yeah.
For sure.
100% I agree. And I think,
Which is what we think is, hopefully,
yeah,
Leon's going to appear at the end and save her. Would be nice. That would be a good.
That would be good. And I think, something is better than nothing when, we're not necessarily playing as, Leon throughout this game because of the horror aspect. I still think that he has a place for, this game going back to even the RPD. It's like whether or not Leon shows up there specifically, just having Leon in there somewhat, or if it's a couple chapters, it's not just like the Chris segment where it's kind of, attached onto the end where it seems
Yeah, I don't
forced.
think it would be like that anyway, because Leon typically moves alone or with one other person, and that one other person only really happens in 6, and he kind of has to be with her. Like, he's not there with her by default.
No, yeah.
They're there at the same time per chance in the beginning, and then he sticks with her because he's got a lead, right? Leon's usually operating alone. So if he does show up to save Grace, it's going to probably be alone. It's not going to be like Chris, where he shows up with a whole
team and a helicopter. Yeah.
Not that was Chris's team, because that was Blue Umbrella's team.
It was.
But
he usually comes in with a squad or
with
somebody.
a squad. He is the infantryman, right? It's not going to be like that. So it's going to be a little bit more intimate, I think. And I don't see them killing anybody. I will say that. I wouldn't be surprised at this point if their thought process is they're old, like, let's kill them. But to address some comments that we've gotten, as you said earlier, it's not that we think that Leon's too old to kick ass, obviously. I mean, look at the Batman the Animated Series.
Right.
Bruce Wayne's kicking ass, and
ass.
he's like 80 years old.
Right.
So, like, no, it's fiction. It doesn't matter how old they are. They're basically superheroes, right? It's that it does make sense in the sense that, like, can we create a truly immersive first-person, third-person horror experience where the fear is addictive if the main character's not fearful?
They've been through it all. They know everything.
Yeah.
You know, like
the
you said,
player's going to be scared.
Yeah,
right?
like you said,
some players are like, I'm scared.
Like Leon's not going to be scared of a body dropping down from the ceiling, but Grace will.
He won't even flinch.
Yeah, he's like, dude, I've seen 1,000 dead bodies in my time. I've seen 1,000 BOWs in my time. But
I've killed people in New York City.
Literally, in Vendetta.
I keep saying that as a joke, but it does happen.
It happens in Vendetta. Watch it.
He literally blows up traffic.
Yeah.
Like that. People aren't zombies. He doesn't do it on purpose. I mean, maybe he does.
Vendetta is the most, like, ridiculous CGI film, but it's it's so funny, it's good.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think to what you were saying, like, can we ever have these characters in a game again with that fear factor? Yes or no? At all.
With what they're going for in Resident Evil 9, no. We will never get that again. That doesn't mean that's the last time we'll see them in Resident Evil, though.
Yeah.
There is always going to be action evil.
Yeah, I think there's always going to be room for them to come
Resident
back.
Evil has always had action and horror. It's never been one or the other. And there was, we did say, I believe this is the second time we're recording this video because the first one got fucked up. But
yeah,
we did say in the other recording that it does. It's funny how it's come full circle where people are asking for more action. I think we also said that in the other video as well, that it's already out.
The breakdown, it's in there.
The breakdown, yeah. And it just goes to show that Resident Evil is more nuanced than people give it credit for, because you need the right blend of action and horror to make it exciting. The perfect Resident Evil experience to me is not super horrific. It's not super action. So it's not RE6 and it's not, Resident Evil Remake for me, personally. Not that Remake's not perfect. I'm just saying, what Resident Evil has set its identity to is the perfect blend of having horrific atmosphere and creatures with high tension action heroes basically fighting them in situations, whether you're with a friend or by yourself. Resident Evil 4 is kind of the perfect formula where those two things merited together. Resident Evil 4 Remake is then perfected.
I agree.
Resident Evil 4 Original's a little bit more cheesy, less horror. Resident Evil 4 Remake's like that perfected.
And people are longing for that action to kind of come back to get your Leons and your Jills and your Chris's back.
All I'll say is that if you want that again, you should be very excited about what's going to happen when Resident Evil 5 gets remade.
Yeah.
Because they can turn that game around big time.
They can. Yeah.
That game could be more than just an Xbox 360 lobby.
Right.
Which is what it is. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
That game is not, whether a lot of people will like that game for what it is. Most people like that game because they remember the fun times with their friends playing that game.
Co-op and co-op mercenaries.
All
that. And it could still be done. And I think, I am still happy they are going a little bit back into horror in this one, because I think with Village, obviously, it got a little bit more into action and it tried to expand that. I just think that, like,
Village tried to do it too fast.
They try to do it too fast, and I just think that there is going to be, obviously that split down the middle of who likes action, who likes horror, but as long as you just connect it to some Raccoon City survivors and you give us maybe a section towards the end with Leon, I would be happy. I still come from the side of like, if you had these older Raccoon City characters in there, because they're older, why couldn't the age play a factor in as to maybe why they're not on their A game anymore? Not that that would create fear while playing, but if you ever put them up against certain odds where it might not be as easy for them anymore. They're no spring chickens anymore. You know what I mean? Like they're older. They might be a little slower in some regards. Like they're still really good at it depends on how they write them, right? I still think that one day you could still have a Jill and an RE10 and make it effective, at least in my opinion.
Jill would be the one to do it with because of the T-virus slowing her aging down.
Yeah.
I do hear what you're saying, and I think there are other people out there who will agree with you. What I would say is, because it is a suspense of disbelief, or you have to suspend your belief a little bit, right? I don't want Leon and Chris in walkers.
No.
Or holding their back like, oh, man. This is like, I don't care to see them old like that. So when it's time for them to pass the torch, they should pass the torch. If this is a game where one of them is going to pass the torch, that's fine.
That's what they're making it seem like. It's a passing of the torch
and that would
game.
be fine. And that would be fine.
Yeah.
I don't think, I think Resident Evil massively fucked up with Piers. I don't think Piers should have died. I think he was the perfect replacement for Chris. But 6 is also another animal entirely.
Yeah.
And we will get to there at some point, I'm sure.
And 6 being the real last game, the mainline game anyway, that Leon was in. I think him showing up in 9, it's been enough time.
Yeah, RE6 took place in what, 2012?
2012, yeah.
So Death Island was 2019 or 2017? I think it was 2017.
Yeah, because I know RE6 was 2012 to 2013 to like June 2013. It was like in that. That's when RE6 takes place. It's like end of 2012 into 2013.
I think Death Island takes place before 7, so I think it's 2015 or 2016.
That sounds about right.
That's the last time we've seen all of them but Chris.
Yeah.
So, and Chris has basically been sidelined to a minor role, which is fine. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to have them all the time, but they have done a piss poor job of setting up the next generation. And the two that we're getting are both blue/green, hazel-eyed blonde women. So they also didn't do a very good job at distinguishing between Rose and Grace. It's actually so bad that a lot of people keep calling her Rose by accident.
Yeah.
Including us.
Yeah.
Like, it happened, and then we have to catch ourselves. Like, oh no, this is Grace, not Rose.
Yeah.
Like, where is the next generation of men? Where's the next generation of not blonde-haired women? Like, why aren't we seeing these characters? Sherry is also blue-haired and blonde-eyed. Or blonde-haired and blue-eyed, rather.
Yeah, and we haven't seen her since 6.
That'd be crazy, blue-haired and blonde-eyed.
Which you said she would be, what, 36 at this point?
She would, no, in this story,
RE9
she would be
timeline,
30-something.
Right.
Because she was, what, 11? They said in Resident Evil 2? So 98, she would be 40 something.
40. Okay.
She would be in her 40s.
Damn.
But Sherry also has the G antibodies.
She does.
She has the healing factor. She has slowed aging. Sherry and Jill could carry the future for a little while, and that would be interesting.
Yeah. There's so many things that they could do.
Jake, who knows what Jake's got in him? I mean, he had the cure. The blood was the trigger,
and he's fucked off since 6, so we just have no idea what they would ever do. But obviously we could go about this, for a long time because we love these characters. We love these conversations. But let us know your thoughts on this whole Leon, not being the main protagonist and not being able to fit this mold of a horror game in 2026 by the time this comes out.
I would also say let us know how you guys would pass the torch to the next generation.
It's a good question, yeah.
Or would you just say, fuck the torch, reboot the whole series, and let's have our characters young again and just have events play out differently?
Yeah.
Because that's another option that I think Resident Evil could do at some point. Like, it would be so...
It was thought about years ago.
Crazy if after the remakes were over, they were just like, okay, let's reboot it, and now Wesker's not going to die until the finale.
Yeah.
They could do that.
But some people are like, well, they already kind of did a soft reboot with 7, but at
Yeah.
the same time, some people that
That's
don't like what they're doing.
completely out the window now that everything's getting tied back.
Exactly. But here's the thing, though. Some people that don't like where they're going with the story, they always tend to go back to the remakes.
For sure.
And that's it. And that's all they really want to
For
play.
sure.
And if that's where you land and fall with this RE stuff, that's fine. You enjoy what you enjoy. But some people aren't a fan of what they're doing with the characters, so they're like, I'm just going to go back to the remakes or the originals because they're always there to play.
Which runs the risk of that Capcom has had all these years. Change is sometimes good, and change sometimes is divisive.
It's a give and take.
Resident Evil would not still be around if they didn't change as many times as they have.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't be the juggernaut in the gaming industry.
30
that
years
it is.
later, yeah.
It's one of the few that's joining the 30 Club.
Yep.
There's a lot. Spyro, Crash,
Final
Resident
Fantasy.
Evil, Final Fantasy. Well, Final Fantasy's already there. Pokemon, Final Fantasy was 1987.
Oh, yes. That's well over.
Zelda's already been there, too.
Yeah.
But 93, or 96 has a lot of franchises that are turning 30. Yu-Gi-Oh! There's a lot of 30s.
Yeah.
And those are all very big names. So joining Final Fantasy and Zelda and Mario would be the 30s Club. They would be joining the 30s Club. And if you take out Nintendo IPs, how many do we really have?
It's hard to list them. That's been going on consistently for because again, we got to say consistently because some dip off and come back. And Ari had a little dip, but it was always around though. Still.
Yeah,
Always putting stuff out,
well,
even if it was just ports.
Even between 2012 and 2017, they still had, I believe, a movie. They still had spin-offs.
Yeah,
like it wasn't just the main line was gone. It's always been here. They had the movies, too.
Yeah, and they had a break between 6 and 7 for the main line, but like you said, there was always something coming out that was still keeping the name, the franchise around, even when we thought it was very questionable at times. But we're still here 30 years later talking, and that's the thing, is like, you know, with RE, it's just, it always keeps the conversation going when they have that innovative change, when they have certain things that do keep it refreshing, keep it in the conversation.
Resident Evil is something that can easily last as long as a DC comic.
Yeah, it just
can keep going forever.
Forever.
Just keep refreshing it.
And the passing of the torch thing can be done if it's just done right. So let's just see what they do. Let us know in our comments what you would like to see done with Leon in this game, or like John said, as far as the passing of the torch, how would you like to see it, you know, be done? And that's it for this video, guys. So hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and stay tuned for more Let's Talk Resident Evil.
Peace.
Peace.